Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and everybody out there that knows I have an awesome spot in my heart for my fellow veterans. And with this veteran here, I would have to salute him if we were in uniform. He is my good friend Oakland McCulloch. I'm going to call him Oak because our parents only call us by our full names. And my good friend Oak here he believes that today's leaders have a responsibility to inspire the leaders of tomorrow. Oak is a retired lieutenant colonel. He has over 40 years of leadership experience, to include 23 years as a combat arms officer in the Army. He is the author of Your Leadership Legacy, so stay tuned because I'm going to have a free book giveaway. Your Leadership Legacy, Becoming the Leader You Were Meant to Be. And he rocks the stage, and I can't wait one day. Since he's kind of local to me, only a couple hours north, I'm going to rock some stages with my good friend Oak here. I'm going to get him in the circuit to go out and rock stages with me. But he's all about being a servant leader, and that's where my heart comes from. I'm a Christian, and I just believe in really servant leadership. And me and Oak are, we're good friends until probably December 10th of this year, when the Army-Navy game is. So we'll be combatants that day. But today we're good. So thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why?
My favorite color is blue.
Blue.
I just love it. It's a calming color. And like you, I'm a Christian as well. And it's a calming color for me. And I live right on the ocean. I love the blue water. So blue,
like navy blue?
No, not navy.
I love it. Hey man, I know that you've been, from the cadets since '81. You served in some sort of uniform in service to our country.
Right.
Thank you for that until 2009. Can we get kind of to the roots of where you kind of started and really built up this leadership, and then be able to pass it on to build leaders of our future?
Yeah. So I always tell people, look, my leadership experience started when I was a young man. I was always captain of my sports team, baseball, basketball, football. I was student government president. I was class president. And really it was my two people in high school, besides my father. My father, certainly, I am who I am because of him, no doubt about it. But I also had two big influences in high school, my basketball coach and my history teacher. I majored in history in college, and my basketball coach, I keep in touch with both of them still. And they were a huge influence on me during my high school years. And then I went off to West Point, did not graduate from West Point, but I was there for 2 years, came home, ran my father's business for about 18 months, helped him run his business, and then finished up in ROTC. And I was the battalion commander, had some leadership positions in ROTC. And then I came into the Army, my first 5 years as an infantry officer, my last 18 years as an armored cavalry officer, and had a lot of leadership experiences. But I always tell people that the other person I give a lot of credit for is my first platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Penson, who has since passed away. When I took over my platoon, I showed up. They were already out at a dismounted live fire exercise. They were training to do this exercise in the afternoon, live fire, dismounted. And I show up about lunchtime. He grabs me by the shoulder. He says, "Come on over here, Lieutenant." He says, "Let's go have an MRE underneath this tree." And we went over there and we sat down underneath this tree and we were eating an MRE. And he said, "Look, you're the boss. You're the officer. You're the second lieutenant. We'll do things however you want to do them. But having said that, I've been in the Army 23 years. I was 24 years old. He'd been in the Army 23 years. He'd been in the Army almost as long as I'd been alive."
Right.
He says, "If you're going to do something stupid, I'm going to tell you.
Thank you.
You still want to do it that way, we'll do it that way, but it's my job to tell you." And, every time, and I listened to that man, and every time I'd start to do something and I'd tell him what I was going to do, he'd say, "You really want to do it that way?" And I'd say, "Well, I thought I did, but let's think about that."
That's great, man. You actually took the advice, and I'm happy to hear that you did that, just because, we would, go into Iraq or whatnot. We were in certain situations, and, our E6, E7 would kind of take the young officer aside and kind of say, some of them didn't. And it put us in very precarious situation. I'm glad that comes from the heart. And that's beautiful you did that. So when it comes to leadership, what is your personal definition of leadership?
Yeah, I'm a servant leader guy. I believe that leadership is taking care of people. Leadership is about people, and anybody who doesn't believe that or doesn't understand that can't be a good leader. It's not about flow charts. It's not about money. It's not about organizations. It's about people. Now, I got it. Leaders got to make companies got to make money, and it's the company's got to be successful.
Sure.
But the way you do that is you take care of people, and if you take
Yes.
care of people, and they really believe, they have the trust, because you can't lead people without trust.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And if they trust that you really do care about them and that you have their best interests at heart, they will do anything you ask of them. Anything.
Right. Yeah, and they'll follow you into battle if they feel that trust. And a lot of it comes. And it's funny you say that. It's not funny. It's amazing you say that, because it's about trust and respect. I actually speak about this on stage, because
as I do too.
Okay, so if you were to come over with your bride, your wife, and you're to come to my door, and I've known you for a while, Oak, right? And you bring her, I'm gonna hop off my chair, open the door, be like, hey, how are you, Oak? Hey, Mrs. McCulloch, and can I get you a beer or something like that, or come on in and let's have a drink. But if you were to come to my door, right, and just you, it's open. Hey, Ferg, got a beer? You know where it's at, right? Because I trust you, but I might not respect you. But if you can trust, I would have to salute you, but I don't trust you yet until I know. It's beautiful that you said that. So when you in 2009, did you start kind of getting into teaching other to-be leaders to lead? Is that how it worked, or what happened after?
So my last assignment on active duty, I ran an Army ROTC program. So I was producing second lieutenants for the United States Army, and me and my boss, me and the guy, my second in command, again, Master Sergeant David Powell, who I say he works for me. He was probably a better leader than I was. I mean, he was an awesome man. Still is. I mean, I still stay in touch with him. And one day we were sitting there talking about what we were doing, the importance of what we were doing, producing leaders, not only for the Army, but for the nation. And he said to me, boss, great leadership handed down from generation to generation is what develops great nations. And I thought, wow, what a powerful quote. I wish I could take credit for that, but I can't. It's his.
Right.
And the most powerful thing about that, Scott, is that you can take that word nations and you can change out anything you want for that. Company, university, hospital, sports team, fire department, police department, doesn't matter. It doesn't change the meaning of that one bit, because every organization at every level needs good leadership.
Love it. And so when you're maybe working with organizations, what are you finding, maybe even the discovery period, is their blind spot when it comes to good leadership?
Yeah, I always find two things. Number one, communication. Everybody, you go to an organization and you ask the question, how good is the communication in this organization? You know what the answer you almost always get is, it's great. But when you dig down into it, it isn't. And communication is so important at all levels and in all aspects. So it's verbal and nonverbal communication. It's emails, it's memos, it's text, it's listening, which is the thing that none of us do very well, or very few of us. But all those things are so important to really not only lead, but to build that trust in people and start building that trust and building that respect. Because whether you like it or not, the way you communicate is a direct reflection of you, and people are going to make judgments about you on how you communicate. And the other aspect that I always find that organizations have problems with is that trust piece. You got, lots of times you got leaders who want to lead from behind a desk. And my number one advice to everybody who wants to be a leader is lead from walking around. Don't lead from behind a desk.
Wow, that's strong. So you go into a company and the CEO might say, hey man, this Oak guy, I think we need him, to bring in and have some ownership and some leadership that comes through. And so you meet with the CEO, and he might introduce you to the CFO and the rest of the C-suite people. Now, he's calling you in to teach them to lead their squad of people. How do you deal with the egos of people that are going, dude, why is this guy even here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And I'm picking your brain because it's happened to me and I fell on my face a couple times, with how to handle them. How do you handle that one person who is maybe ego driven? Like, what the hell? Why?
Yeah, well, we all have egos. Let's
I shouldn't say handle. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How do you work with?
Yeah. We all have egos. I mean, I have one, and every one of us do. And if you don't, I don't even want you on my team, because I want people who think they're good. If you don't think you're good, why should I think you're good? I mean, we all need to have an ego. You just got to be able to control it, handle it, and use it when it's good, and don't use it when it's bad.
Absolutely.
And so the way I always handle that is I try to make sure everybody understands that I'm no better than anybody else. I'm not perfect. I keep trying to convince my wife that I am, but she's not buying it.
Love it.
but I always try to start, if I find somebody like that, I always try to start. First of all, I try to get one-on-one with them, and I just kind of tell them a story about something that I did that I screwed up.
Ooh.
Just to make sure they understand. Look, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And that's okay. We're all going to make mistakes. And I talk about that. We're all going to make mistakes. I don't care if you made a mistake. I care about what you did after you made the mistake. That's the key. Did you try to hide it? Did you try to blame somebody else? Or do you walk up to me and say, hey, boss, I screwed up and this is how we're going to fix it?
Yeah.
So if you come across that way, that it's not a zero defect, all of us are going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. Then you kind of put them at ease a little bit. You're not holier than thou that's going to come and point the finger and say, you guys are all screwed up and I could do this better than any of you. Because again, I had a boss who retired, a 4-star general. He said, Oak, if you didn't make a mistake today, you probably didn't do anything.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love that you're transparent and vulnerable. And that does help, working with organizations and then getting them, lack of a better term, on your side, but to be able to be working with you.
Right. They understand that you're not there as an enemy. You're there to help.
Right. Love it. Love it. So what is there any, like when you're starting to work with people in to get into to level up their leadership, is there any good question that you wish they would ask you but never do?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I don't know that I'd have to think about that one, and I'm not.
No, really I get it. I ask it.
I've never been asked that question,
but to think, because if I'm working with a coach, I want to know their lineage. Your lineage is already covered, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like 81 to 09. You were in leadership position. Even before then, is high school. Team captains and stuff like that. I love it. I love it. So then, as a leader, Oak, what do you think your strengths are?
Yeah, so I think my strength, number one, is that I'm a people person, that I actually do care about people, and I don't try to fake it. I mean, I don't have to fake it. I really do care about people, and I had a boss who retired, a 3-star general, who kind of taught me that when I was a young captain, and taught me how to make people understand that I really do care about them, and so I was lucky in that sense. So I think that's my number one strength. I think my other strength is that I do a good job of communicating with people, and especially listening to people. And again, I had a boss who taught me the importance of that, unfortunately, a little later in my life. But you gotta really care about the people in your organization. If you do that, I think that's the first step to being, number one, a servant leader and being a good leader.
No matter what. Like, again, I'm a Christian. Jesus, best leader that's ever walked the earth. But no matter what you follow, even in other religions and whatnot, their leaders come from servants.
Yeah.
Servancy, if you I love it. So let's dig into your weaknesses. What weaknesses do you feel that you have that you're overcoming, in that maybe that you might not ever overcome?
Yeah, well, I think, again, we all have an ego, and every once in a while my wife has to slap mine down. And she reminds me, I'll say something and she say, you're not perfect either. You make mistakes. You do,
right.
So I always say my wife is my best friend and my greatest supporter, but she's also my biggest critic too. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You got to have that person who does that. And I have an ego just like everybody else, and every once in a while it shows its ugly head. But I think that's probably, if I was going to say, that's probably my biggest weakness, is that every once in a while I forget, I forget that I'm not perfect. That I do make.
You strive so much for perfection, knowing you'll reach greatness if you do that.
That's right.
Because no one's perfect, but you'll reach greatness. That's a little Vince Lombardi for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite Lombardi quotes.
But the thing is along the way you have to get checked, and I'm glad you said your wife's name's Beth.
Kelly.
Sorry, Kelly. Yeah.
And she was a Army nurse for 8 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we met each other in ROTC.
And she had to work with doctors. We know how doctors
absolutely.
You want them to have huge egos. They're actually on a whiteboard. I wish I could turn my camera. I actually have EGO, edging God out. Like if you get too ego, you're pushing out your creator.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to use that.
You're following. So then have you seen the movie Back to the Future, Oak?
Yeah, I have.
All right, let's get in that DeLorean with Marty McFly. Let's go back to the Double Deuce, the 22-year-old Oak. Okay, I don't want you to really change anything because you lived a freaking awesome life, but what might you drop on him, a knowledge nugget or two, to maybe help him shorten a learning curve, blast through, maybe just a little bit quicker?
Yeah, I think the number one thing I would tell a 22-year-old me is I would teach him how to listen better. Again, I got taught that, but I didn't get taught that till I was about 35 years old.
Right.
And if I had known that when I was a 22-year-old, I think it would have made a huge difference in my, not only my development as a leader, I would have developed quicker and better, but also just as a person.
So with that being said, though, would he have listened?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but if I had taught it the way that this guy taught
it, you taught it.
So he was a lieutenant colonel, and I was a captain, and I would go by him in the office, in the hallway, probably 3 days a week. We'd cross paths, and he'd just taken over, and I had just gotten there, so we knew, both of us were new. And I was walking by him one day, and he said, "Oak, how are you?" And I said, "Fine." And I kept walking. He said, No, stop. Come here. How are you? I want to know. And so we sat there and talked, and he asked me a couple questions. And he said, "And your wife's name's Kelly, right? How's she doing? What does she do?" And I told him, and he says, "And you got 2 kids. They're playing soccer. Did they have a game this weekend? How'd they do?"
Wow.
Now this guy's a busy man. He's a lieutenant colonel, run it. And not one time did I see him look at his watch like he had somewhere better to be.
Right.
And he did that almost every time I crossed the path with him in the hallway, he'd stop and talk to me. So maybe not that long every time, but he'd always stop and we'd actually have a conversation, not just "Fine, how are you?" "I'm fine," and keep moving. And I thought I was special. And then one day I stuck my head out the door and he's doing it to another captain. So he really cared. He wanted to know people. And so that's one of the pieces of advice I give every young leader. I have a little card that I hand out to young leaders. It's got 10 things on it. And number one is every day, find out one thing new about one person in your organization, not about work, about personal life. Go find one person in your organization every day and find out one thing new about them.
Yeah. Love that.
You'll see the trust just explode.
Oh my gosh. I was just going to say trust, it grows off of that because people love to be heard, because especially in whether you're climbing the corporate ladder or even the military, you go when they say go. That's where I think a lot of my listening skills faltered as well as I got out into the civilian world, because I had to listen so much. I felt liberated that I didn't have to listen and follow directions as much, but just come to find out what they instilled in me works across the board.
It does. Leadership is leadership.
Right. Love it. Love it. So, Oak, how do you want your dash remembered? That little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, man. How do you want dash remembered?
Absolutely. I tell people this all the time. When I named the book Your Leadership Legacy, and it's not about me. It's not about me, what the things I did. That doesn't matter.
Sure.
It really doesn't. the only things that matter that I did was raising two great young man and a young lady.
Awesome.
That's and helping them to raise our grandkids. That's the only thing that really matters, important to me, and being a good husband. But I want my legacy to be the people that I left behind, my children, my grandchildren, the young men and women I helped develop into leaders. So 20, 30 years from now, when I'm not here, my legacy will still be with them,
Beautiful.
teaching them the things so they can pass on to the next generation. Great leadership handed down from generation to generation develops great nations. That's what I want my legacy to be. That's that I help develop that next generation so they can develop the next generation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just keep going. So what do you think people misunderstand the most about you?
That I get this all the time. They say, if you really believe in servant leadership, then you let people walk all over you. You've been talking to me for 10 minutes. You think I let people walk on me? I don't think so. They don't understand what servant leadership means. They really don't. And so I think people kind of, when I tell them I believe in servant leadership, if they don't know me, then I think the first thing that comes to their mind is that I just let people walk all over me. And I don't believe me.
Right. It's nothing about that. I mean,
it isn't.
Even Jesus walked into the tax collectors and flipped the table on him, dude.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So then what is your definition of a life well lived?
Of a what?
Life well lived.
Yeah. So I think, it's not about money. Look, we got to have money. I got it. And it is important, but that's not what it's about for me. It's about a life well lived for me is helping people become better people, and fishing. I like to fish.
I love it. And you live in a great area for fishing.
I do. I have my yacht, my 17-foot John boat with a 40 horsepower engine. So
I love it, dude.
so I go back in the mangroves and fish as much as I can.
What do you like to go after? Little bass, little fun stuff?
Back there, I go back for mangroves and some redfish and black drum.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Oak, let's take out this equation. Anything electronic that we think that we can't live without, right? But what are 3 things? It can be people, places, or things. 3 things that Oak can't live without.
Yeah, my wife. Absolutely.
Better say that.
I mean, I am a better person because of her, no doubt about it.
Kelly sounds amazing.
And in my church, God, my faith, and I'm a better Christian because of my wife as well, no doubt about that either. We're both very active in the church and happy to be. That's a huge part of our lives. And then the last piece is probably my grandkids.
Love it. Love it.
I got an 8-year-old granddaughter, a 5-year-old grandson, and a 2-year-old grandson.
Love it. What's the biggest lesson you think you've learned from Kelly?
Here's perfect example.
Yeah.
To care about people, even if you don't know them. When we get ready to go somewhere, we leave the condo. I live in a condo, 65 units. We leave at least 5 minutes earlier than we have to, because she wants to be able to stop and talk to people, or allow people to talk to her if we meet them in the elevator or if we meet them in the garage or whatever. She says, because that may be what they really need today is to talk to you. Wow. And you need to have enough time set aside that you can stop and let somebody talk to you if that's what they really need to do that day.
Wow.
And I learned that. And I'll tell you the other way I learned that was I used to go grocery shopping with her, and I did my husbandly duty. I pushed the cart behind her, and we stopped, and she's talking to this lady in the grocery store in the aisles. They talked probably for 10 minutes. And they got done, and we started going. I said, "Hon, who was that? I don't know who that was. Who is that?" She, "I don't know. I just met her." but she obviously wanted to talk, so I stopped and listened to her.
Yeah.
Love that. It. She has taught me that lesson, and I really do that now.
And that helps with what you do in leadership and getting companies to own it. And she probably, by her doing that, I'm thinking like she helps even with stories that you tell with regards to the person that you worked for that wanted to know about your whole family. And it's that's just fantastic.
And I do tell people that. I tell people that story. I tell people that are leaders in businesses.
Yeah.
For the main reason that they need to do that.
Right.
They need to make sure they got time set aside in the day. And this is what I tell them. Look, and again, I had a boss who taught me this. I didn't make this up. I'm just a dumb farm boy. But he said, Oak, never, ever, ever turn down a chance to get your own cup of coffee. He said, I don't care how high up in the organization you get, no matter what rank you get, never turn down a chance to get your own cup of coffee. You do two things when you do that. Number one, you show people that you're human. People don't have to wait on you. You can actually go get your own cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And number two, you get to stop along the way and talk to people on the way and back from the coffee pot.
Right.
He said, and if you're lucky, you got 2 or 3 different ways you can go, so that each time you go a different way and talk to different people.
It's not like water cooler talk either. It's to really level them up, to see what's going on in their lives, especially
in their area, not in your office, in their area.
Love it. I love it. Love this. This is fantastic. I have so many knowledge and it's dropped on me. This is beautiful. And squad, we are going to take a good friend Oak here through our leveling up lightning round just as soon as we get back from thanking our sponsors and affiliates. Time to shine today, podcast varsity squad. We are back, and Oak, you and I we're going to meet one day. We live so close. We have.
Yeah, we do.
And we can talk about some of these questions 15, 20 minutes. But within our leveling up lightning round, you have 5 seconds with no explanations.
Okay.
You ready to rock?
Sure.
Awesome, sir. Here we go. What is the best leveling up advice Oak's ever received?
Be yourself.
Yes. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Self-discipline.
Beautiful. So if you see me walking down the street, man, Fergie looks like he's in his doldrums a little bit. Outside of your book, The Leadership Legacy, what book might you hand me to level me up?
John Wooden on leadership.
Oh my gosh.
One of the best books I've ever read.
Oak, what's your most commonly used emoji, if any, when you text?
Yeah, I don't use emojis.
Awesome. No worries. That's why I said if any with you. What nicknames growing up?
Okie.
Okie. Got it. Chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Chess.
Right. Figure so. Awesome. Go-to ice cream flavor?
Vanilla.
There's a sandwich called the Okie. Build that sandwich for me.
Ham, onions, tomatoes, and cheese.
Beautiful. Love it. Love meat eaters. My man. Favorite charity and or organization you like to give your time or money to?
St. Jude's.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. You know, I get those in the mail all the time. And I always am like, even if it's $10, I do it. You know, I love that.
I had a sister who died of leukemia who
sorry,
they took care of for free. So,
man. Best decade of music, 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
Wow. Probably 70s, I would say.
70s? I love 70s. I have that 70s, you know, I just turned 50, so I was a youngster in the 70s, right? But I still play that because my mom's passed on and she would always play these songs. And so when I'm actually editing a podcast or, you know, even just chilling out, I throw on the 70s. But I'm an 80s kid, you know, the big hair, don't care. You know, those guys. I love it. So, Oak, how can we find you, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media. I'm on LinkedIn. That's the main one I do. But I also have a Facebook, a professional, personal Facebook. I've got Instagram, Twitter, but I also have a website. And if you want to go on my website, you can see what presentations I give. And if you want me to come give a presentation for your organization, you can grab me there. I got my cell phone, my email on there. There's a link to my book if you want. That'll take you to Amazon so you can buy the book. But if you want a signed copy, then send me an email and we'll figure out the best way to get you a signed copy.
And that's a great segue into the book. Let's talk a little bit.
Well, you know, and I had somebody ask me, they said, well, I just bought your book. Will you autograph it for me? And I said, absolutely not. And they said, why? And I said, because only famous people have autographs. I said, I'll sign it for you.
Love it. I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I think you dropped it in 2021, right?
Yeah. So I started writing it on the 16th of February, 2020, and I published it on the 12th of February, 2021.
And we needed some leadership during that time, my friend.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Let's dig into a little bit. What flows in the book? Maybe give them a synopsis.
Yeah. So the underlying theme is servant leadership. And I talk about that throughout the book, but really there's no theory in my book whatsoever. Theory is important. And if you want to be a good leader, you got to learn a little theory. I got it. But this is not about theory. This is about everyday things that everyday leaders can do to improve their leadership skills and their abilities. And it's based on a lot of my stories. I've got other people's stories in there as well, some friends and my wife and my kids. And
beautiful.
But a lot of it is on my stories about things that I did and that I did well or didn't do well, and lessons learned and how to get better. And at the end of every chapter are some key points, and then some key takeaways, and then a note page a blank page that you can take notes on.
I love it. And Squad, we're going to do a book giveaway for the first person that puts leave your legacy. Let's just put leave your legacy, because I know you've listened into any of our social, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, wherever you're going to find this podcast, put leave your legacy in there. And I'll make sure that I get a signed copy out to you from my good friend Oak here.
Absolutely.
And we'll get that out to you just as soon as you leave that comment. We'll start the protocol. So Oak, do me one last solid and leave us with one last knowledge nugget that we can take with us, internalize, and take action on.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something. I was talking to a lady yesterday, in fact, and she was talking about writing a book. And it doesn't matter if it's writing a book or whatever that you're trying to do. The number one piece of advice that I give people is stop thinking about it and do it.
Wow.
And for me, that somebody gave that to me when I was listening to a motivational speaker, a very good one, in fact. And I told him I wanted to get out on the speaking engagement. And he said, "So have you written a book, Oak?" And I said, "Well, not yet." I said, "I'm thinking about it." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, stop thinking about it and do it."
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the night I went home and I wrote up my table of contents and I started the book the next day.
Love it. I love it. And I can't wait. I'm sadly, I haven't dug into it yet, but I'm actually just going to pick up the Kindle version today so I can get into it. But Squad, we just had really a free masterclass from a rock star leader, my good friend here, Oak. He started his leadership as a young man. He excelled in sports, captain of the team, had really good role models like his basketball coach, his history teacher, and also Sergeant First Class Pensett. I believe I said his name right. But, he believes that taking care of people is leadership. It's not about flowcharts or money. It's about the people. He always stressed throughout our whole little chat here that trust is paramount. If you can build the trust, people will follow you everywhere. And great leadership is handed down. And that great leadership that is handed down develops great nations, it develops great companies, it develops great teams. And again, we get back into the blind spot of things, and that's where communication and trust. And he wants leaders to lead by walking around. Don't lead from behind your desk. My good friend Oak isn't afraid to show his vulnerabilities, even his weaknesses, if it's going to help the person he's coaching to be a better leader. He genuinely cares. He communicates fantastically. He listens, not only with his ears, but his eyes. He leans in. I was watching, even when I was asking him a question, he listened with his neck. He leaned in to really get it, to formulate his answers. And that's something I really, really respect out of somebody. He wants you to go out, and this is from Kelly, go out, his wife, go out and learn something new about someone every day. Build your community. Be genuinely interested, and care about people that you don't know. That's again, also from his lovely wife, Kelly. Build that community with strangers, and if you're working, get up and get your own cup of coffee. Go out and have awesome conversations with people, whether you're part of your squad or part of another squad, but just have genuine conversations and be genuinely interested in them. He wants you to stop thinking and just do it. We get stuck in this analysis paralysis where we just start thinking and thinking, we get froze. He had a gentleman that got him to write his book, said, just do it. Get out there and Nike that thing. My good friend Oak is planting trees that he's never going to sit in the shade of. And that's the kind of people I love to align myself with. We'll be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people you associate with. I'm so glad that I get to associate with Oak. He levels up his health. He levels up his wealth. He's earned his varsity squad letter here at Time to Shine today. I'm blessed to know you, my friend. I can't wait to collaborate with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Scott. This was
You
great.
bet. Chat soon.